I think we first met live in Ibiza at one of Scott Bond's events. I'm not sure because it was 20-something years ago, but that's how I
That was the
remember
Ahead
it.
thing,
Yes.
when he first started doing something outside of Gatecrasher. And
Yeah.
Ben Loss was there
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well. And I think it said Solarstone, Orkidea and Young Parisians as well.
Yeah.
But the first proper time I remember meeting you was when I came over to do that show in Helsinki with Liama and Scott, I think.
Yeah, the old warehouse building. Yeah.
Yeah. But we clicked straight away, didn't we? Like
Yeah.
immediately for some reason. Wonder why. I found you extremely handsome. I felt a little intimidating.
And I think, that was 2003, 4, something like that. And I had been playing your music since, already in early days of Unity, 96, 97, something like that. The remixes.
Was that when Unity started? The
Yeah,
club?
96.
Was it 96?
Yeah.
I think my first Solarstone release was in 97.
Okay.
The Calling.
Yeah.
Did you ever play the Space Kitten stuff?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you? Because we did loads of remixes of Space Kittens on Perfecto and labels like that. It changed from like acid disco to like Goa trance and new energy. In fact, when we did the remix of Johan New Kicks, we did 2 remixes. One was called the New Energy mix and one was called the Goa mix.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the one I was playing.
The Goa mix.
Yeah.
That was a good record. Danny Rampling played that 5 weeks in a row on Love Groove Dance Party.
Wow.
Yeah. My first impressions of you, you seem very very calm and very relaxed and confident and knew a lot about music. And I felt, you were friendly, and I don't think I'd ever met anybody from Finland before. So I didn't know whether that was typical or not. And I felt able to be my usual self around you. Probably isn't such a good thing.
Yeah, I thought of you immediately as a really funny guy. And I think the first party that you came for, it was you, Liama, Scott. It was promoted by Misk Brothers, Oded and Asaf. So really fun times, around the music. And I think just, I saw a super passionate music lover, DJ, producer guy. So, because it's you listen to someone's music and you wonder what kind of person he or she
and
is.
Quite often you're extremely disappointed.
I don't know, but with you, it was like a lot of exactly. I thought, oh, this is how he would be, and then oh, I didn't thought he would be, quirky and funny like this.
That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
I always say I never want to meet, meet my musical heroes. I always worry that if I ever met them, I would be disappointed. This did happen to me one time. I was in the Young Parisians, and we had this meeting at Soho House. Basically, this guy wanted, he thought he could get Tony Visconti to produce one of our tracks. The guy who produced all the Bowie stuff. And so this guy took us to Soho House, which is a member-only club in London, to talk about it. And I saw Marco, the guitarist from Adam and the Ants, sitting over there. And the Young Parisians, the name of the band, came from the first ever Adam and the Ants single. So I saw Marco Peroni. I was like, God, it's Marco from Adam and the Ants. And the chap we were with said, oh, I know Marco, I'll introduce you. So I was extremely like, oh God, I'm really looking forward to meeting him. And he was there on his phone. And we walked over and the guy said, hey, this is Rich from the Young Parisians. And Marco just went, ugh. And I stood there like an idiot for about 10 seconds and walked away absolutely crestfallen. So I never want to meet the Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah.
I'd be heartbroken if they were horrible.
Yeah, this is an interesting one that you decided to take a little bit different take on the 11th edition. You've done like DJ mixes, but now we go kind of Sasha and Dickweed route, presenting this together, which I'm really happy and honored and just excited to be part of. So it's a collaboration in terms of our productions and songs we select and songs you sign to the label. So yeah, it is different, and also DJ-wise, it is the live experience will be us playing it together, which so it will be different from my set or my DJ mix, and it will be different from your.
That's the thing, we've done the whole thing
yeah.
together from the start. With the previous ones, I had a guest DJ and it would be you're doing one disc, I'll do the rest. We discussed the tracks, but it was entirely down to you really what you use, as long as there were some tracks from the label in there. But after 10, I just wanted to do something new. And I always loved those live mix compilations. And I didn't want to do it myself. And you're the one I just always thought of. And I said to Paula, let's ask Tapio if he wants to do it. So I remember having the call with you. I want to do it live in a club, all new music, and we're just going to record the thing, and you know. And you were instantly, yes. Oh, I think I had goosebumps.
Yeah.
Went, oh, I think I have goosebumps. And then, so this is a completely different thing. So we looked for new material, and I said to you, find some forgotten gems that we could license for the album. So this is completely different to the previous 10. Hopefully, if they like it, we can do it again next year.
Yeah. And we have been talking about Global Underground specifically and Renaissance, so it would be nice to name drop Astra.
I think one of the reasons why I thought this would work with us, and I think one of the reasons why we first got on so well, is because these particular albums like Renaissance and Northern Exposure, the early Global Underground albums, these are both of our favourite albums, and the music on them and the way they were mixed, that's what we both love. So this whole thing we're doing now, it's the thing that we both really love the most as DJs and producers, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think what we've been discussing about the released songs that have been signed here, that those are not perhaps the biggest anthems and chart hits of the last year, but like tracks that we love, that we've been a little bit like left on a less attention. We want to reintroduce them just the way, for example, Northern Exposure and Renaissance mixes.
These compilations, you said to me that most of the tracks on those albums had already been released.
Yeah.
And they became, you know, people fell in love with them through the compilation.
Yeah.
I think about, on this album, I think 70% of it is unreleased, but there are some tracks that people will know. And like you said, when you present them in a mix, it kind of, people hear them in a different way. Because when two records are mixed together, do you remember in the old days when you would, you'd get a great compilation and then you'd go to the record shop and you'd get the records and you'd be like, huh, they don't sound the same as they did in the mix, because they don't sound as good without the other bit of the record being on top.
Yeah, totally.
And one of the things we've got in this mix is some really great 1 + 1 = 3 moments. You know, the transition, the magic often happens in the transition, doesn't it? The reharmonization.
Yeah, totally. And I think also one nice part of this whole process has been the gigs in Amsterdam and in Helsinki, where we knew that this was coming, so this was like a good preparation or test run of how we do the all night long, how we do the long set, how do we prepare, what kind of musical flow we want to have in there. So I think both of those gigs prepared us in a great way for the actual
And also,
album.
That's where we made the decision. I said to you, this album does need to reflect what it's like when we do a back-to-back set. And we quite often chuck some fairly obscure classics in there, and you said, well, we should include some of those in the album. And I said, go and find some then.
Yeah.
You know, and you came forward with all of these, some of these obscure records I've never heard. There were a couple of them that actually were recent releases that I hadn't heard, and I thought they were classics.
To me personally, what makes this even more special is that we are recording this live at Fabric in London. 25 years in London, one of the most legendary clubs in the whole world. The Liberation Day parties, I played 3 times here with absolutely electric atmosphere. So this is just, I think, perfect setting. The room where we are sitting now is where it will be recorded, which I think has a really great vibe and good sound system and booth with people around us.
Oh, we've just been told that it's a new sound system for tonight. I'd never been to Fabric before, but I heard about it. I'm surprised I've never been here. I mean, I used to go out clubbing in London a lot, and I never came to Fabric, and I've heard so many things about it. So when you said that it was the perfect place, I just said, okay, Tapio says so then.
And we had the option, the original plan was to record this in Äänivalli in Helsinki, which is absolutely amazing club. But to be honest, you know, the music, the process, we were not there, which was definitely the right decision to postpone it, because, you know, you found so much new amazing music for the label after that, and we both
we had
finished.
enough time.
Yeah.
When we first started talking about this, it was like a year before or something, but the time just got away from us, didn't it? And, you know, licensing the tracks and, you know, and then I think we got 3 weeks away from Helsinki, and I said, we're not going to be able to do it. You know, we don't have enough time. Yeah. And I think it's probably a good thing, because we had the Helsinki show as a trial run, and now then we had another 4 months. But now we've nailed it now.
If you compare this to a usual DJ set, we come so much more detailedly prepared what we'll do, to a very, very detailed level, which we normally don't do, because we want to be in the moment and interact with the audience. Then again, if we compare this to a DJ mix, usual DJ mix that you would do in Ableton, fine-tune it and tweak it for a month in the studio, compared to that, we do it in one take live. So kind of from one perspective, we are like super prepared, and from another perspective, this is like very raw and organic.
If you go back to those early albums that we both love, they were entirely prepared beforehand. I mean, if you want to release an album of dance music and you know exactly which tracks you're going to use, you have to license them, you have to get all these things. It'd be absolutely stupid of us to think, oh, we're just going to make it up as we go along. What's the point of that? You know, we've crafted this thing down to the finest detail. So the only thing that could possibly go wrong is if you fuck it up really badly.
We'll know in 6 hours if that happened.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, you know, are you going to be... We know what we're doing. We know that the journey is good. We know that the records are brilliant, because we've been through the records so many times. You know, that one's not quite there. That was a brilliant record, but it's just not going to work here. But this one, you know, this track list has been a year in the making, right? So, I mean, if that much planning doesn't work, then we're kind of doomed.
Yeah.
Really. We did have, when we were talking about the obscure classics, it mainly came from you. There was a couple I dropped in there. One that I really wanted to use was Love in Traffic. I would have loved to include that, because I had this idea about like separating the vocals from the music and doing it in a slightly different way. And when that one got declined, I was a little bit disappointed, but then I thought, well, I kind of understood it in a way. But a couple of the ones that we really wanted, I was surprised that we got. I don't think we didn't fight each other. We didn't. I don't think there were any tracks where you particularly wanted that I didn't, or the other way around. Were there?
No, I don't think so.
No, there was. I think there was one that we were trying to license and you really, really wanted, but I wasn't really that bothered about it, and so we made a decision 2 weeks ago just to remove it, just in case, because there's no point in relying on a track that you can't use. But I think we did quite well with the license.
Yeah, I'm really happy. The couple ones that I really wanted that were declined, I think the Solomon one with Forward Forever, the mashup would have been nice. I'm really happy from the licensed music that we got many of the kind of the new wave of trance or transy progressive from Autoflower, Elke Klein, Close Proximity.
That Autoflower one was one of the first ones you were like, we've got to use this.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was one of the first ones. But there were a couple of tracks that I thought, like, I'd asked this guy, Effin, to make me a track for the new, because he's had a track on nearly every one. Oh, I'm going to do Pure Trance XI. Can you make me a track? And he made this track that's absolutely brilliant. And then when we were, You remember when we were doing the track and we had folders, yes, no, and maybe. And I had this track cadence theory, and you put it in the no folder. And I looked at it, I was like, no! How can you put it in the no? But then you said, I like it, but I just don't think it's going to work. So I just accepted it.
Yeah, and all of the, all the music that was considered was great. It's just a question of, you need to take it down to a certain amount and reflect both our tastes. And but I'm really, really happy with what
it was great to have those tracks anyway, because any track that I got sent that I thought this is brilliant, because I always think they're brilliant, this will make it onto the album. And then when you said I'm not sure it's going to work, then I can put them out as singles on Pure Trance anyway, so everyone's happy at the end of the day. Never tell the artist that it's going to be used until the final track list is done, because it's horrible disappointing people. They get really excited about it, and then, sorry, it didn't make the album, and they're like, oh, why didn't it make the album? And it's hard to tell an artist that a track didn't make it. Was there anything unreleased chosen explicitly for it? All of them. They were all chosen explicitly for this, because the album was at the forefront of our minds the whole time, wasn't it? That you get sent a track, and that's definitely got to go on there.
Yeah, my productions, I think this includes 7 new Orkidea productions in some form, originals or my remixes or someone else's remixes or our collaborations. So this is like, I don't know, 2 years of my studio work is really landing here.
This is quite, I think this is quite unusual as well. Normally when I do a disc of a compilation, I try to include 1 or 2, but it seemed we had all this new music, didn't we?
Yeah.
You had all this brilliant new music, and I had a lot of tracks as well, and some remixes, some of my old tracks as well. And I think there's going to be something like 44 tracks in the mix, and I think we've got something like 25% of it is our own music, which is really unusual. But when we do play an open to close in a club, we do play a lot of our own tracks. So it had to be, but that's why we decided to make Slow Motion 7, right? It had to be a new. We've been talking about Slow Motion 7 for about 2 years. That was actually one of the last ones got finished.
Only once you go to the double
gatefold vinyl.
Yeah.
People have been asking about that for years. We just need to do number 8.
Slow Motion 1 was on my Metaverse album.
Yeah.
And
what year was that?
2008. And I think that was the first collaboration, but how, and it started from us meeting on gigs, and I think we had this vision of, I think Hail Bob was reference track.
We both loved that. We wanted to have something with a running bass line that played a melody.
Yeah.
But that's Slow Motion 1. I said about tracks not making it to the album. When I did my artist album, Rain Stars Eternal, Slow Motion 1 was obviously meant to be on that, and then it didn't work with the rest of the album. It's like deciding which one of your children to send to the orphanage. Do you know what I mean? So we did number 1, didn't we? I came up with that melody on the FM7 piano.
Dream
synth thing, and I sent that to you, and then we built it from there. Why did we decide to do a second one? What happened?
I don't know how we decided or kind of landed on doing the series.
Maybe we were trying to think of a title, and one of us said, hey, why don't we just call it Slow Motion 2? And that was it then. But we did do another track together, Zeitgeist. Why did we not call that Slow Motion whatever?
It didn't have the dream synth. The sound has been used in all of these.
I did actually use the dream synth in Slow Motion 7 initially when I was, the idea you sent me, and I started playing something over it, and I thought, he's not going to want me to, I can't do that again. I kind of wish I had in a way. Did we use it in the last one, Slow Motion 6, the dream synth?
I think it's in some shape or form in all of those. Maybe I'm just.
All right, that's only one. The version on the album, we'll leave that as it is, but we will do another mix, including the dream synth.
Isn't the breakdown? Is that a dream synth?
That was where I was going to put it. It's not now.
Okay, it sounds like a filtered version.
Maybe we need to change it. How long have we got?
Yeah.
Can we get it mastered in 2 hours' time? I like it though. I like it. Part 1, Part 2, Part 6, Part 7. It's cool. Do you think maybe it has something to do with Jar's series of tracks like Oxygen 1 to 57?
Yeah, might well be that he's a huge inspiration and reference for both of us, so maybe it came from there.
Could be. I mean, I've done this Part 1, Part 2 thing a couple of times in the past. Spectrum, Last Defeat, Shield, and I've always liked this thing, but it was always the same track. But Oxygen series, each part of that was quite different, wasn't it? But the same instrumentation, I'm not sure. I did sample a sound from that in one of those, in one of the slow motion tracks. Little pew sound. Closed down by Warner Music. I guess most of it is done in our minds, the preparation, isn't it? So most of it's done in our minds. We assemble the tracks into some kind of... We know that we've got tracks that need to go nearer the start and in the middle at the end, don't we? I know for me, the key mixing is important. We want the tracks to be in the right order and we want the next record to sound harmonic with it. But it's interesting because when you've been DJing before, I've noticed you play, and sometimes you play records that I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I would have put that there, but I've said to you, well, it's all about the record, not the key. I remember you saying something like that to me, but one of the good things about putting together an album like this over a long period of time is that you can, what I do, I go to the artist and say, we really want to use your track, but it needs to be a semitone higher or lower, do you mind? And they always say yes. You know, so part of the preparation on my side anyways, that is once we've got the tracks is making sure that they sound right together and making a new version. There's a lot of work involved with getting the stems and does it work in the different key, if not swapping them around. I don't know, I mean, how does your mind work in this with this kind of thing?
It's interesting how we didn't have a project plan in Excel sort of scheduled plan for this. But we knew how it will go, so it starts with finding music, just sourcing music, both our own and released and something to be signed for the label, and then starts what you just described, this very detailed like sonic preparation and mastering.
That's
and
actually quite far into it.
Yeah.
Initially, it's reaching out to people you like. I think the first thing we do is reach out to producers we like and say, hey, we're doing this thing. Do you have anything?
Yeah.
Like with Effin and his track that didn't make it on.
Yeah.
That's the first bit, isn't it?
And then obviously the production of our own new music in there, which goes alongside all the time here, just from composing, production, mastering, all that. And then, which has been very specific for this, has been the preparation for the DJ set. And we found out that there's no technology really built for this. And Recordbox has it in theory, and it did not work, which was one of the biggest pain points.
The collaborative playlist. That's one of the things that's kept us back.
Yeah.
Because you're in Helsinki, I'm in Wales, and you need to be in the room together. And we thought that using this collaborative playlist function on Recordbox was the answer. And this went on for ages, didn't it? It was on the phone to technical support, and why doesn't it work? And they were trying to explain, and it held us back. And in the end, you said to me, "Hey, just send me a screenshot of your." And I was like, "Oh." And Paula kept saying to me, "You need to just get on with it. Stop waiting for this bloody collaborative playlist."
Yeah.
I was like, I had it in my head, and we had to do it a certain way, and you just said that, and then.
Yeah, and I think that got us to a certain point, but then you said somewhere end of last year that, hey, I think we should be sitting in same room working on this. And then we scheduled like a weekend in Helsinki, 3 days of studio work and really sitting in kitchen, preparing the mix points, the actual flow of the mix was done there.
Those couple of days, it was just like bang, bang, bang. But it came together, and then we came out of that with, okay, we need to change the key of this track. You need to finish these 4-5 tracks you're working on.
Yeah.
And But yeah, I mean, the preparation, I don't think, people probably aren't interested, but if you're an artist, you know that there's so much involved. It's not just taking a load of records and putting them end to end. They've got to work in the right order, there's got to be a build, you've got to know where there's going to be a drop.
Yeah. And then of course, what happens in the back, the whole, you know, you need to sign all the music, you need to have contracts, you need to, you know, get an agreement with all these people, and then you have, and this is more you and Paula working on that. And then of course, it's not just the music, it's like the visual concept, the touring concept, this recording event. So there's so many things happening which is outside of the music itself.
And it's 4 hours.
Yeah.
You know, it's 4 hours. It's not, we're going to take an hour out of this, or we had to make a decision of how many CDs there were going to be. So we had to run through the whole thing. How many CDs is it going to be? It's over 40 tracks on it is a lot, especially when a lot of it is new. I'm knackered already.
Yeah.
We haven't done the show.
And you know, I don't know, it's fascinating. If you think of the producers, there must be like 50 people working on it. Then outside of the music, there must be like 15, 20 people working on various aspects of this. So it's, you know, like all the things in life, it's such a, you know, big group effort.
Yeah, and then when it's out, you're like, when should we start working on the next one?
Yeah.
In terms of challenges of recording it, we're not recording it ourselves. We've got an amazing guy called Barney who's recording it. He's going to be recording the stereo mix and each deck separately, and so if we need to tweak anything afterwards we can, and also the room mics, because you know you can record your set in a club with a Zoom recorder and whatever and mix the crowd over the top, but this is going to be much more refined and sophisticated than that. I think that is the biggest challenge, is getting the recording that we can mix, you know, the levels and stuff afterwards. I think we've done all the hard work. That we've done. This is the fun bit.
Yeah, and that is kind of a personal challenge, and I don't mean necessarily in a negative way, but we've been preparing this for so long, and this happens live. So you want to enjoy it, you want to connect with the audience, but then it is also this technical performance that we are doing that we want to make sure that it goes well. So how do we balance between those different tasks?
You already told me. You told me last weekend. You said, well, I'll mix my records, and while I'm mixing my records, you have fun.
Yeah.
And then while you're mixing your records, I'll have fun and go to the bar.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, how long have I got?
Yeah.
I need to go to the toilet and get a drink.
Yeah, true. And then I think in terms of how, you know, when we've been playing together before, I think musically, we both have our progressive side and the trancey side, and slightly darker side, and the, you know, kind of classics side, but with a little bit of a different take on those. Maybe I may be leaning a little bit more towards the chunky progressive, and then you embrace the big melodies.
That's interesting. When we DJ together, maybe that's one of the things people like.
Yeah.
You know when Orkidea's playing a record.
Yeah.
You know when Solarstone's playing a record. Then when we play one we've made together, that's like the woo.
Yeah, yeah.
The woo moment.
Yeah.
I think we just need to concentrate on what we're doing and encourage each other. You know, if we've got something particularly important, this really needs to be mixed in like this. And I know you're going to mix that record. I'll be like, Tapio, you need to filter it down in bar 64.
So will you be in the bar shouting that for me, or
on that little walkie-talkies, sending a little pager message?
Bass up 1 decibel now.
That's one of the good things about being able to tweak it afterwards.
Yeah.
If a record, you know, sometimes in a club you just turn up the gain, or you might add a bit with too much bass, or it's not got enough bass. Then afterwards we can get it all up in Pro Tools or whatever and say that record really needs a bit more bass, so we can do it after.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know, do you?
Yeah.
You don't know whether all the tracks are going to be sonically suitable. It sounds okay in the studio, you know, but do you remember there was that one track when we were doing, when we were listening to Slow Motion 7, and we'd been doing it on our computers and that. And then when we went into the studio in Helsinki, we're like, God, the bass sounds weird.
Yeah, yeah.
And you couldn't tell. I couldn't tell in my studio for some reason. So
I think our back-to-back sets, they've been nicely getting longer in time, which means there's more wider variety in music that we get to cover. I think that's something which has been like recent development.
it has changed a little bit, I think. I think we really relaxed into each other. That doesn't sound right. We've relaxed into each other. And we kind of allow each other to go off and do something unexpected. Like when I played Pump Up the Jam.
Yeah. It was such a fun moment in Amsterdam. I played Jerome's remix of Nana. The room goes off really big time. You're like, oh, what am I'm going to follow?
How can I follow Nana?
And then I'm like, okay, I said, like, you know, you're an amazing DJ. You'll come up with something. And then you mix in Pump Up the Jam and the whole room goes like,
again,
up like one notch. I'm like, how am I supposed to follow up this one?
So you drop down into a breakbeat or something. Yeah. It's nice that because when you mix on your own, it's great and you really love it and it's all down to you. But there's always that element of surprise. But I always know that, like, I know he's going to play something great. Or I think, oh, I'm going to play this one after his next record, and then you go off on one, and I'm thinking, oh God, oh, I've got this. And you're searching through your records. You're searching through your USB. Where's that track? Where's that track? I've got to play that next because of what you did.
And like in Helsinki a year ago in Äänivalu, when you dropped the Love in Traffic, kind of we had been in trance, big trance for a couple hours, and then all of a sudden you just drop it to like simple dark beats and vocal.
That's why I wanted to use it on the album.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted it, because it reminded me of that moment.
Yeah.
But it's okay, because I think we've replaced that with another track on the album. That moment, you know. We did talk about including Nana, didn't we? And we talked of including, but then I thought, well, what's the point of that? Because this isn't about our greatest hits. This is about new music, and you know, we can record a best of Solarstone and Orkidea thing one day, but that's not what this is about. When we go back to those Global Underground and albums like that, this was about introducing people to future classics.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but you're quite good at pulling obscure tracks out when we DJ together. Oh, I'm like, what's this? You're like, you don't know this record? How long have you been doing this for?
You know, I'm at least a little bit nervous before every gig, have always been, and I think that just shows that the gig is important.
It shows that you care.
Yeah, this will be extra special, so I think it will be nervous energy here, but I think it's the two of us. You know, we've been preparing for this. We've been preparing well. We've done a couple test runs. I think we are as well prepared as possible, and also it is easier when there's two of you. You share, you know, you support each other, and it's easier. And also a friend of mine said recently something that was really quite nice, that isn't a privilege to get to do something that you're nervous about. You know, to live a life not being nervous about anything, to be like the excitement and all that. So I think it is such a privilege to be here, and I'm just, you know, embracing the moment.
You do feel, you know, I do. I always feel a little bit anxious before that. I mean, I don't often get excited, but I've actually been excited for this because we're doing something different. But I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I mean, I know that if there are any major problems, we can edit it afterwards. But of course, you know, little bits here and there, that's what happens when you play records.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be absolutely immaculate, because if we wanted it to be, perfect, we would have pre-recorded it.
Yeah.
You know. But of course, if any of the CDJs work, we'll just plug in the phone and play pre-recorded set. So if this is people's first experience of Orkidea and Solarstone journey, what do we hope that they take away from it?
I think this album represents the things that have always been the most special to me in electronic music and trance music. it has the at the same time the emotion and musicality, but then the drive and the energy, like the combination of those two. And also it is a true musical journey from like deep, slow, atmospheric progressive
122.
to 138, full on hands in the air, uplifting and flows through different kind of genres and grooves and energy levels.
It's kind of like an overview of trance music.
Yeah.
Really, isn't it? From the kind of thing that we both fell in love with 30 years ago to what's happening now.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will come away from this, if they've never experienced it before, having a pretty good idea of what trance is like and what the role of a DJ is in presenting it to you and taking you on that journey.
Yeah.
I think that's fair enough.
Amen.
Amen.